All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, so glad you could join us. By the way, quick reminder, we got some fun guests this week. We have Patrick Duvall. He'll be joining us.
Patrick.
Did I say Patrick Duvall again?
You did.
I always say that because Robert Duvall. I'm a big fan of Robert Duvall, very famous actor.
And Adam Duvall, David Duvall.
Of course. Duvall Patrick, Democratic presidential candidate, will be joining us tomorrow. Also, we have Chris Kattan. Come on, man. Night at the Roxbury. Very, very funny guy. He'll be joining us on Wednesday. And coming up in hour number 3 today, NFL legend, UNLV legend, Randall Cunningham will be joining us in hour number 3 today. But joining us right now, we always love catching up with him on Mondays. We know he's a very busy man, but I'm sure he has a lot to say with what has transpired here over the last several days with this impeachment inquiry and much, much more. It is attorney Michael Avenatti. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Excellent. Good morning, gentlemen.
What's up, Michael?
Thanks for joining us, Michael. Okay, I want to start with this, and I think this is important because when you hear a CNN anchor who is usually not on Donald Trump's side, in regards to Jeffrey Toobin on CNN, he said that he believes that Donald Trump has won this impeachment battle. Have a listen to this, and then I want your response.
You know what struck me about this hearing was how Donald Trump, in a way, has already won. How much did we hear about Hunter Biden? Over and over again about Hunter Biden. That's what the Republicans are talking about constantly. And, there are questions about Hunter Biden's behavior. And so, this incredible shift of emphasis. And, it's going to be a real challenge for us as journalists to decide how much to follow along with this.
Okay, Michael, what is your response to that? Do you think Jeffrey Toobin makes a valid point there?
Well, I think he makes a valid point as it relates to public relations and messaging. There's no question about that. The point is not valid from a legal perspective. But, I think he makes the point that I've made repeatedly, which is the Republicans just generally are more organized, they're more cohesive, they're better at messaging and communicating than the Democrats. The Democrats get outplayed in this regard on a fairly consistent basis, and I think that is, what you've seen play out by the Republicans and the Trump sycophants. They've been beating on this Hunter Biden drum now for weeks, just like they were beating on Mueller for months, which had a lot of effect from a PR standpoint. And they're good at messaging. They're good at communicating. That's why one of the reasons why Donald Trump was elected in 2016. So I think he's right about that. From a legal perspective, of course he's not right. But look, the Democrats are getting ready, in my view, to make a critical mistake, and I've been fairly consistent about this over the last few weeks, and that is sending these charges to the Senate for this, ridiculous rigged trial is absurd, and frankly, it's just downright stupid.
Yeah.
The House, if they want to pass the impeachment charges, they should pass the charges and hold the charges and continue to investigate, continue to take testimony from key witnesses like Parnas and others, really press the issue in the courts, because otherwise what's going to happen is this thing's going to go to the Senate and it's going to be over. It's already over in the Senate, basically. The leadership has indicated that they're going to run basically a kangaroo trial. Everyone's already made up their mind. And this is going to be embarrassing for the Democrats.
What do you make of Mitch McConnell? I believe he was on Fox News, which is probably the only network he'll show up on, saying that he's going back and he's getting advice from the president of the United States. Is that not his job in this situation? Isn't he supposed to pretend like he's not? It's typical partisan politics. What do you make of Mitch McConnell in this situation?
I think it's outrageous. You've got basically the foreperson of a jury who has publicly announced that that individual is going to be working with the defense. If that happened in a criminal or a civil trial, it'd be outrageous. You can't conduct yourself like that. And these guys are so brazen at this point. They don't even give a shit. They're so brazen that they basically just announce they're going to do this before they do it, and they dare someone to stop them.
Talk a little bit. Let's talk about Lindsey Graham here, since we are talking about the trial. And by the way, I agree with everything you said about Mitch McConnell, the useless turtle, as I like to call him. So Lindsey Graham was on Face the Nation. He's talking about the upcoming trial in the Senate and where he stands on this thing.
I am clearly made up my mind. I'm not trying to hide the fact that I have disdain for the accusations in the process, so I don't need any witnesses. The president can make a request to call witnesses. They can make a request to call Mike Pence and Pompeo and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. I am ready to vote on the underlying articles. I don't really need to hear a lot of witnesses.
There he is himself, the words of Lindsey Graham, a man with no backbone who will say and do anything to appease the president. What do you make of those statements?
Well, imagine if Lindsey Graham was accused of a crime, or somebody that he cared about was accused of a crime. Imagine if there were jurors on that jury, the jury that would consider the crimes against Lindsey or somebody that he cared about. And the jurors just announced, you know what, I don't need to hear any of the evidence. I've already made up my mind because I don't like Lindsey, or I don't like Lindsey's family member, so I'm just going to vote to convict. It's absurd. I mean, this entire process is being turned on its head.
It really is. You're right. So Donald Trump and many of the people on the right, the Republicans, they think they speak for all Americans, and they say Americans do not support the impeachment and removal. But yet a new Fox News poll just came out that says at least half the country support impeachment and removal. Why is it that, Republicans certainly don't want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, I think you're right that the poll obviously shows that the majority supports impeachment and removal. But I'm going to go back to what I said earlier when I talked about the Republicans and their ability to message and communicate. This 30% or 40% or 38%, somewhere in that range of Americans that strongly support Trump and really will look the other way despite anything that he does. They are much louder in many ways than the others on the other side. I mean, it's just the nature of how that group is built and the attributes of the group. But they're a very loud and vocal group. And so I think in many ways they drown out even a larger percentage sometimes.
He is attorney Michael Avenatti. This is the Vegas Take. Michael, I have to bring up Stormy Daniels at least once. Here's why. In response to comparisons to the Clinton impeachment, it was Democratic Representative Zoe Lofgren. He claimed the House should look at adult entertainer Stormy Daniels' case in the impeachment inquiry. Have a listen to this, and then we'll discuss.
I would just like to note that the argument that somehow lying about a sexual affair is an abuse of presidential power, but the misuse of presidential power to get a benefit somehow doesn't matter. If it's lying about sex, we could put Stormy Daniels' case ahead of us. We don't believe that's a high crime and misdemeanor. Yield. No, and it is not before us, and it should not be for us, because it's not an abuse of presidential power. I yield back.
All right, Michael, what's your response to that?
Well, here's what I'll say. I think the Democrats have really kind of missed out somewhat over the last, 3, 4, 6 weeks while this has been going on. I think the messaging should have been very simple. If lying about a blowjob is impeachable, then lying about what happened with Ukraine and conducting himself in the way that he has to sell out the country for his own political gain, as Trump has done, is most certainly impeachable. I mean, that's the comparison that needs to be made. The Democrats ought to be talking about how Bill Clinton was impeached because he lied about a blowjob morning, noon, and night, because that's the reality of the situation.
Well said. Michael, I look at this situation and the way that it's being handled. It almost seems like Trump's, Team Trump is looking at this like they know that he's going to get impeached in the House. They're 99% sure that he's not going to get impeached by the Senate. And they're looking forward to 2020, and they're saying, well, what about Hunter Biden? What about Hunter Biden? They're taking an opportunity here to just flip the script and flip the narrative and make it all about Hunter Biden, because they know that it's going to. It looks right now like Joe Biden will be his competitor in 2020, but they're not even taking this seriously. They're taking their opportunity with this massive platform to make it all about Hunter. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Look, I agree 100%, and I think it's another reason why the House should not move these charges out of the House over to the Senate, because as soon as the Democrats lose control of this process, I mean, this thing's going to be a bloodbath. Trump and the Republicans are going to be taking a victory lap that's going to last months on this thing. And I think it is a critical mistake. I think Schiff has made some critical mistakes, frankly, in the way, and the leadership of the Democratic Party in the House not recognizing this. And they most certainly should recognize it now, because you got Lindsey Graham, McConnell, and others telegraphing, not even telegraphing, just stating outright that there's not going to be a trial in the Senate, not a real trial. I mean, there may be a make-believe trial. They may go through the motions, but it's clear as day what's going to happen in the Senate. So I don't know why the House would send these charges to the Senate. I just don't.
He's Michael Avenatti. We'll be taking some phone calls next segment, 257-5396. A little bit of breaking news, Michael. Former Republican presidential candidate Carly Fiorina has just said that it is vital that Donald Trump be impeached, but yet she still says she may vote for him in 2020 anyway. And, of course, if we recall, it was Donald Trump that was trashing her on her looks not that long ago. What do you make of this? I mean, I think there are many Republicans out there like Carly Fiorina, who I've never supported. I've never been a big fan of hers. She says that it's vital that Trump be impeached, but yet she still might vote for him anyway. You want to talk about no backbone. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I saw this right before I got on. Look, I think it's ridiculous. How do you square those two views? I mean, they're impossible to square. I mean, if you think the guy needs to be impeached, must be impeached because it's vital, then how the hell can you turn around and say that you may vote for him? It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a valid question. But I think there are a lot of Republicans out there like that, right? They're so set in their beliefs. All they care about is policy. And even though they know deep down in their heart that what Donald Trump did was wrong enough possibly to be impeached like a Carly Fiorina, they would still rather vote for a man who committed impeachable offenses than vote for a Democrat. I mean, how do you reason with somebody like that?
Well, I mean, I think this goes back to what we've talked about, which is, it's become apparent now that it's party over country and its policy. Look, as long as Trump maintains his position on a handful of policies that are critical to the Republican base, as long as he maintains that he's pro-life, as long as he maintains a position that he's basically anti-immigrant, anti-immigration, as long as he maintains a position of low taxes, low tax rates, he's going to maintain that base. And the Republicans will just hold their nose and vote for him and support him.
Speaking of people that support Donald Trump, let's talk about Representative Mike Johnson from Louisiana for a second. So, Michael, as you know, Donald Trump tweeted over the weekend another classless, beneath the presidency tweet saying that Nancy Pelosi's teeth were falling out, okay? Mike Johnson, defending that tweet on CNN with Ana Cabrera, asked if he condones the president talking about women in this way. Have a listen to this cut.
The president has a very unorthodox style of messaging. It's not the way that I talk or that I would tweet. But look, the president's very frustrated about how he's been treated. He lashes out sometimes, and I think a lot of the American people understand that. It was mentioned just a moment ago in your discussion that he really hadn't gotten due process. He didn't get a fair trial in the House, and that's very bothersome to him because there's going to be an asterisk by his presidency in the history books that he was the third president to be impeached by the House, and it's really not fair the way it's been done. So he's frustrated about that.
Mike Johnson going after, saying that Donald Trump's tweet about Nancy Pelosi's teeth falling out is, quote, an unorthodox style. What do you make of that, Michael?
Well, I wonder if Mike Johnson has a mother or a wife or a daughter. He obviously does. And I wonder if he would find it acceptable if the president of the United States went after one of them the way that Trump went after Nancy Pelosi. Look, this is an example, though, of what we're going to see. We're going to see more of this as the election heats up. You're not going to see less of it. I mean, this is the way Trump communicates. And that's why, as I've said, I mean, this is going to be a very, very ugly election, incredibly ugly, probably the most divisive election and ugliest election that we've seen in our lifetime, certainly in modern times. This thing's going to be ugly.
Yeah, there's no question, and it's only going to get worse. I tend to agree with you. All right, Michael, let's talk about your favorite, your best friend. That would be Biff, also known as Donald Trump Jr. So this story came out a few days ago, Michael. I'm sure you saw it. His trip to Mongolia, and now people are saying that he illegally killed a sheep. Can you shed some light on this and your very good friend, Donald Trump Jr.?
Well, yeah, from what I understand, he went and basically killed this endangered sheep, this endangered species, and then after the fact, they sought a permit that allowed him to do it. And there's some questions as to how he got that permit. et cetera. Can you imagine, just take a moment, let's imagine if one of the Obama children had killed an endangered species or something in another country, and this had gone down.
Do you
Imagine
think
what would happen.
Do you think he used an assault rifle?
Yeah, I'm sure. They probably released it in like a 6x9 enclosure so he could hit it.
I mean, really, does John? I had a conversation with a Republican on this show a few months ago, a prominent one. She came in studio, and she said she loved Don Jr. She loved him. She was a big fan. And I looked at her on the air, and I'm talking about Amy Tarkanian, who ran the Republican Party here in Las Vegas for a short time. And I looked at her, and
She said he was a nice guy.
Yeah, and I looked at her, and I said, can you name me one accomplishment that Don Jr. has ever made in his life? Maybe he's done a few charity contributions and that sort of stuff. Can you name me one huge accomplishment? She looked at me with this face, and she couldn't name one, Michael.
Apparently he contributes to taxidermy.
Yeah, apparently he does do that. I mean, Michael, what has this guy done in his life, Don Jr.?
No,
Nothing.
the guy, I mean, look, I've made this point repeatedly. This guy has accomplished nothing in his life other than being part of the lucky sperm club. I mean, that's about it. Or unlucky sperm club, depending on your perspective. I mean, the guy has accomplished nothing. But look, here is what I will say. This is one of the rare occasions where I will agree with his father. When Don Jr. was born, his father's wife at the time said, well, why don't we call him Don Jr.? And his father said, well, I can't do that because what if he turned out to be a loser? I mean, and people say Trump doesn't have great vision.
That's true. That's a good point. What do you make?
Let's just hope he doesn't kill a koala bear.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens there.
Biff the poacher.
Yeah, seriously. Michael, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Rudy Giuliani because now, as you know, he's made his own Ukraine documentary that apparently shows that Donald Trump is innocent. First of all, with all this crap going on in revolving the Ukrainians and Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani happens to be over there making this documentary. I don't think you could ask a worse time for your personal attorney to be over there in the first place. But what do you make of this and him? Why would he do this? Why would Rudy Giuliani, as he lost his marbles, be in the Ukraine at this time making this documentary?
Yeah, that'd be like me traveling to Oregon and shooting a documentary on Nike. I mean, that's not very bright, frankly.
No.
So I don't know what this guy is thinking. I don't think he is thinking.
Uh-oh, did we lose you? I think your phone cut out there, Michael. I think we missed a little bit of.
Sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
You guys got me?
Yeah, you're good.
Go ahead. All right, we got to get Michael a better phone line. We lost him a little bit there. He is Michael Avenatti. He is joining us on the Vegas Take. We'll get another phone line. And that was actually a pretty funny comment, what he just made. He is actually making the comparison to Rudy Giuliani making his own Ukrainian documentary right now to if Michael Avenatti went to Oregon and did a documentary on Nike. That's if you missed that, that's actually
with a couple of athletes that Nike paid.
That's actually quite funny.
I think it's indicative of how invincible Rudy Giuliani believes he is in this situation and how little. I don't think that the Republicans, Donald Trump and Giuliani, are even scared at all about what's going on right now in the Ukraine, and the fact that they're doing this is kind of saying, hey, you can't touch us. We are untouchable. That's my take on it.
It is amazing to me, going back to Carly Fiorina, there are many Republicans out there that are the same as others that would say, well, you know what Trump did was wrong. It's an impeachable offense. But yet, I'm going to still vote for Donald. That's the thing that amazes me. I believe we have Michael back on the line. Michael, I think we missed what you just said there. Go ahead.
Yeah, we were talking about Rudy Giuliani, and I mean, I think that it really reflects this documentary that he's done. I think it reflects two things: one, his error in going to do this, and two, his belief that he's really not going to be charged.
Exactly.
And this alleged investigation as being no investigation at all. I don't think he's going to be charged for all the reasons I previously stated.
I tend to agree with you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that he's worried at all, and this is very indicative of that.
Michael, I don't know if you've ever met this Democrat Jeff Vandrew of New Jersey, but he made the announcement that he's going to be switching to the GOP. Have you ever met this guy before? What do you make of this story?
You know, I have not met him, but I'm not happy at all about this. Not necessarily he's switching parties. I mean, if that's what he wants to do, that's fine. But, you know, the timing of doing this and allowing Trump to use this, politically, which is what Trump is doing. I mean, I think he met with the president over the weekend and, now Trump's going to use this as some dog and pony show or as part of a dog and pony show relating to impeachment. I think it's despicable. It's disgusting. And, I hope the door should basically hit him in the ass on the way out, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, did this happen at all when Clinton was impeached or anything along the lines like that? I mean, have you heard of this happening before, Michael, under any circumstances?
Well, I mean, there are circumstances where representatives and senators switch parties. It's pretty rare. I don't recall this happening in connection with the Clinton impeachment. It may have, but I don't recall it. But, giving Trump and his communications team this opportunity, again, I think it's just despicable. It's disgusting. If he wants to switch parties, there's no problem in doing that. But there's no reason why he can't wait a couple months before he does it.
Do you think that another Democrat will follow suit with this, or will it be an isolated incident?
No, I think this is going to be an isolated incident. I'd be surprised if there was another. It's certainly not going to be a mass exodus by any stretch. He was facing problems in his district because I think he was polling only at about 28% among Democrats because he refuses to vote for impeachment.
All right, Michael, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll open up the phone lines. He is Michael Avenatti, attorney Michael Avenatti. He's joining us on the line. Question or comment about any of the subjects that we discussed. We could talk about the impeachment inquiry, of course. A lot of things going on in the world of politics right now, and attorney Michael Avenatti is joining us to talk about that. The number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation is 702-257-5396. Again, if you have a question or comment for attorney Michael Avenatti, now is the time to call. It is 257-5396. Yeah,
and hopefully Biff doesn't skin any live giraffes while we're gone.
Yeah, hopefully not. We'll have to see what's going on with that one. But again, attorney Michael Avenatti joining us on the line. 257-5396 is the number to call. And when we come back, I'm going to ask Michael, what are the differences between this Clinton impeachment and the Trump impeachment? Also, Joe Biden leading in the polls. We will ask him about that and much, much more. And as I said, take your calls at 257-5396. Take a quick break. Be back right after this.
Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro. 1, 2, 3.
All right, welcome back. Hour number 2. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us. And we are joined by our special guest and friend of the show, attorney Michael Avenatti, and we are now taking your phone calls. That number, we have a few phone lines open. It is 702-257-5396. Again, that number, 257-5396. If you want to be a part of the program, and I promised we would get right to the phone calls. We've had some people very patiently waiting. Why don't we start off with Todd? Todd, you're first up on the Vegas Take. What's up?
Good morning. I just, I hope you don't hang up on me, but I just find it a little offensive, the bashing of Donald Trump Jr.,
Okay.
Especially from Michael Avenatti. I know Donald Trump Jr. didn't steal money from any handicapped people.
All right, Todd, let me interrupt you real quickly and ask you a question. Do you have a problem with people like Rush Limbaugh attacking the left on a daily basis? Do you have a problem with Tucker Carlson?
That's not what I'm
Hold on,
calling
Todd.
about.
Todd, if you want,
You're
Todd,
in worship of
Todd,
this
Todd,
guy
Todd,
every
Todd,
week.
Todd, if you want to stay on the line,
revolting.
Todd, if you want to stay,
You're in worship
Todd,
of this guy.
Todd,
It's
Todd,
revolting
if you
every
want, I'm
week.
going to pod you down unless you be quiet. You're not going to interrupt me. If you want to stay on the line, you're going to wait. Okay? The man that is on with us on the line right now, you might not like him because of his political beliefs. He's never been convicted of a crime before. So that conversation, that part of the conversation is going to end right now. He could defend himself. So I want you to answer this question for me. Okay? Do you have a problem before you rudely interrupted me, Todd? And you're not going to do that again, or we're going to hang up on you. Rush Limbaugh.
That's what you always
Okay,
do.
hang up on him. This guy's a complete idiot. The question I was going to ask him was, if you have a problem with Michael Avenatti attacking the left, what about Rush Limbaugh, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin attacking the left on a regular basis? I was going to ask him that question, but he was too ignorant.
And Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo
Yeah.
attacking the right. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. And in this show, we give our guests the opportunity to talk about whatever they want to talk about, and
But that guy-
in an unbiased platform, and that's what our show is.
But that guy was too ignorant to have any type of conversation or pullback because he's an absolute troll.
He just can't handle what Michael and what we are saying.
Of course not.
And I'm a Republican, but if Donald Trump Jr. is shooting dodo birds, I have an issue with it.
All right, Michael, we'll try to take a better phone call than that one. 256.
Let me
Go ahead.
chime in on this. Okay?
Yep, go ahead, Michael.
My professional and personal life from the moment that I was born up against Don Jr. any damn day of the week, anywhere, at any time. I'd be happy to what I've accomplished, what I've done with that guy's. Period.
No, I hear you 100%. 257-5396. And there's nothing more, make no mistake about it, nothing more I'd love to hear than Michael Avenatti going up against Donald Trump Jr. in a debate. Let's go to John. John, you're next on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
What's up, John?
Yes. Good morning, and excuse me. Yes, to add to that, what we would all give for Michael Avenatti to be on stage in the debates, if that all worked out, beware Trump. But anyway, my comment is, and I'm a big fan, Mike. I don't agree with everything you say, but every time you are on, I'm listening. So what I wanted to say today is every time I see Nadler, Nancy, Pencilneck, what's his name? I forget.
His name is Adam Schiff.
Literally, it's more repulsive than Donald Trump himself. These three get together, and that's why I'm going to hold my nose and vote for Trump again.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, if they had different people running the Democratic Party other than these living dead, such as these 3 and 4 people, and then you've got Comey. Oh, my God.
All right. Well, John,
he finally admits to something.
All right.
Should have helped out months ago. But
John, I hear what you're saying. Hang on the line, John,
Yeah.
for a second. Let's let Michael respond to that. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. I do think that the leadership of the Democratic Party needs to be turned upside down, and I think it's a problem. And I think it's one of the reasons why people like John, vote Republican. And the fact of the matter is that the Democratic Party doesn't have a lot of fighters. They don't have a lot of folks that are really good at communicating and messaging. And that's a huge problem because frankly, I think that they're right on more issues than the Republicans are.
Yeah.
I think they're right more than the Republicans are, but it's not necessarily whether you're right on an issue or not. It is in the messaging and who the messenger is. And that's a big problem for the party. I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree, John, and we appreciate the phone call. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
we
good call, John.
We don't always have to agree with everybody to respect one another.
That's an interesting perspective. The fact that he does agree with Michael Avenatti. He's a big fan of Michael Avenatti, but he's still going to vote for Donald Trump because of how terrible the leadership is on the Democratic side of things. We've never had a call like that before.
That's a logical
that's our
approach,
first one.
and that's a reasonable approach. 257-5396. Our guest is Michael Avenatti. Question or comments, give us a call. Let's go to Steve. Steve, you're next on the Vegas Take. You're on with Michael. What's up?
What's up, Steve?
Okay, you got me on the phone?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Okay. As far as I'm concerned, right, the president talks out there to the open public for the average working man that works with his hands, okay, that actually works for a living. Now, this is what he gets across. I'm voting for him. A lot of people are going to vote for him for this reason, where he's acting not like a politician. A politician I wouldn't trust from here to eternity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all I got to say.
All right. Well, wow, that was a wonderful point, Steve. I'm not sure what the point was, but Michael, we'll let you respond to that. Go ahead.
Very cogent.
No, I actually, I listened to what Steve said, and I get it, because what Steve just said is what you hear a lot when you go to these swing states that I have been talking about for months on end. When you go to Ohio and Wisconsin and Western Pennsylvania and elsewhere, there's a lot of people that feel exactly the way he feels. Now, I think that this whole thing is bogus relating to Trump speaking for the working men and women of this country. In fact, not only do I think it, I know it, because it's a bunch of nonsense. I mean, this guy is the biggest elitist out there. He's the biggest swamp creature out there. However, he has convinced people like Steve that he's one of them. He has convinced people like Steve that he's changing the system, that he's going to make it, he's going to right the wrongs of the last 30 or 40 or 50 years, and he's going to fight the elitists. He's convinced people of this.
And I think he's done that with his vernacular and just with the way that he communicates and not being formal.
Well, I certainly
100%. Look,
I certainly
he doesn't talk. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I certainly don't disagree with what you're saying, Michael. But here, the fact that Donald Trump cares about Middle America and, as Steve said, people who work with their hands, to me is ridiculous. I think Donald Trump is a phony. I think I think you would agree with this. He's out for himself and his family. I truly do not believe he speaks for middle class America. And quite frankly, I don't think many Republicans speak for middle class America either. That's just my personal opinion, Michael.
Well, no, look, I agree 100% with what you just said, right? But my point and my focus is a little different, right? I think that we need to spend more time, and the Democrats need to spend more time figuring out how it is that Trump has managed to pull this off, right? I mean, he is the most elitist, and yet he has convinced a lot of people like Steve that he's the least elitist.
Right.
And a lot of it has to do with the vernacular, I agree, and the way that he speaks and the way that he communicates. I think part of the problem is you've got too many Democrats out there who are speaking at a level that just doesn't make sense to the average person. They don't use words that the average person uses. They don't use concepts that the average person can understand. They're really speaking at a too high a level. A lot of this communication needs to be at a very base level. And Trump is very talented in messaging and branding. The guy's
you're right.
brilliant when it comes
Listen,
to
I will give him all the credit in the world for that. He uses the media to his advantage more than anyone else I've ever. He's like the Floyd Mayweather of politics. I mean, there's no question. I won't deny that. He is attorney Michael Avenatti. If you have a question or comment, give us a call. That number again, 702-257.
That was a very good comparison, Brian.
That number again, 702-257-5396. I think it is a good comparison.
It was.
Let's go to Paul. Paul, you're next on the Vegas Take. You're on with Michael. What's up?
Hey, what's up, Paul?
Paul, did we lose you?
Hello, Paul.
I think we lost Paul. 257-5396. Let's go to Marge. Marge, you are next on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
Hey, Marge.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I have a two-part question. One is, it's been said that if with this going forward, that in the future, other presidents are going to be a little bit more vulnerable to impeachments. I'd like Michael's thoughts on that. And the second is, we're very much involved with these trade deals, both with our neighbors in Canada and Mexico now, and with something going on with China. It looks like there might be some positive things going on there. And with this impeachment issue, do we see this as a damper? Do we see any probability of it maybe not going through? I know Nancy was holding up the trade deal with both Canada and Mexico because of the impeachment. So, again, I'd like to have Michael's thoughts on that as well.
All right. Thanks for that question, Marge. I appreciate it. Michael, what do you say to that?
Well, in reverse order, I don't think that potential trade deals will be impacted by the impeachment. I don't think the Democrats will hold those deals hostage in light of the impeachment. In fact, I was rather surprised that on the same day that the House announced charges, I think it was last Wednesday, they also gave the president a win, quote unquote, relating to the one trade deal with Canada. So, I was surprised at the timing associated with that. But I take that as an indication they're not going to hold those trade deals hostage. On the second issue relating to whether this is going to make future presidents more vulnerable for impeachment, I just don't believe that because, at least to the best of my knowledge, the best of our knowledge, we haven't had a president in the past who has sought to basically withhold aid to a foreign country unless they assisted him in his political efforts, in his political campaign. So I'd like to think that we're going to get back to normal at some point relating to the level of corruption expected of the presidency, which is zero. And yet you compare what's happened during this presidency, it's off the charts. I mean, look, I hope that Trump's conduct does not become the new normal. Because if so,
that's
we
scary.
got a serious problem.
Yeah, that's scary. I really hope that doesn't happen either.
Based on how Nancy Pelosi said, you don't want to mess with me, and then Joe Biden kind of getting aggressive with that person in Iowa, I think that his conduct has kind of trickled over into the other party.
Yeah, but I think those are JD. I'm going to pull back a little bit on what you said, and I didn't agree with the way Biden and Pelosi handled that, and Michael didn't see anything wrong with it, and that's fine. I understand that. We cannot compare the two here. Make no mistake about it. Donald Trump goes after after women's looks. He's gone after John McCain being a POW. The way Donald Trump goes after people. In fact, Michael, did you see this story? The Army-Navy football game over the weekend, and Donald Trump is speaking to the players before the game, and he's talking about how they can be professional football players and they can serve later in life. What president in the history of this country would ever talk to those brave men and women like that, and particularly in this situation, football players at an Army-Navy game where maybe less than 1% of them will be playing professional football? What did you make of those comments?
I didn't have a problem with those comments because a modification of that policy had been previously made. I think it was during the Obama administration that allowed more players to play professionally and then come back for their service requirements. The problem has been many of these military servicemen and women, the Naval Academy and elsewhere, Air Force Academy, they come out of college or they come out of the academies and they're in top flight shape and they're ready to have a professional sports career, but they have to go serve their time in the military.
Exactly.
And by the time they get done, it's taken some of their best years from them. So the idea of the policy is that we're going to push pause on their requirement of military service, allow them to go play professional sports, and then come back to the branches of the military for their service. I don't have a problem with that because you're not talking about that huge. You're not talking about a huge number of players, to your point,
right,
that would qualify. So I don't really have a problem with the modification of the policy.
Fair enough. You're probably looking at maybe 5 or 6 players every couple of years, and I would actually like to see a strong Army, a strong Navy, a strong Air Force. And if you're a top recruit right now, why would you possibly go to those schools if you know, especially if you come from a family that doesn't have a lot of money?
That's fair,
and they're relying on your athletic career. But if you know that you can't go pro until 6 years after you graduate, I thought it was a great move by Donald Trump, and he was cheered on by 70,000 at that game, Brian.
Yeah, well, that I'm not going to comment on the cheering because I didn't even see what was going on there. But what I will say is that I think there are other things that he could have talked about other than that. That's all I'm going to say. He is attorney Michael Avenatti. Question or comment, give us a call, 257-5396. So, Michael, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about former FBI Director James Comey. He made an appearance on Fox News Sunday, and he's talking about this IG report. Now, Wallace, who I do have a lot of respect for, I think he does a good job on Fox News, he asked what Carter Page can do to regain his reputation. Here it is.
Carter Page was treated unfairly, most significantly by his name being made public. He's a United States citizen, and it never should have been made public, and that's an outrage. But that statement is just a continuation of the lies about the FBI. The FBI is an honest, apolitical organization. Remember the treason, remember the spying, remember all of us going to jail. That was false information that your viewers and millions of others were given. My own mother-in-law was worried I was going to jail. I kept telling her, look, it's all made up. It's all made up. Don't worry about it. But I couldn't say that publicly for 2 years. Well, now I'm saying it on behalf of the FBI. It was all made up. And I hope people will stare at that and learn about what the FBI is like. Human and flawed, but deeply committed to trying to do the right thing.
Michael, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that was a pretty articulate statement by Comey. I don't agree with everything he's done over the years. I have a problem with a number of things that he's done. But I think he was pretty articulate. I agree with it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of a fan of Pete Buttigieg, Michael. You know that, and I know you respect him a great deal, and you've met him on occasions, and he's a smart guy. We both can agree on that. What do you make of the online left putting on all this hate on Pete Buttigieg? Because I think it is completely unfair.
Yeah, I think it's unfair, too. And I saw the CNN piece that came out earlier today about it, and frankly, I thought the CNN piece was a little unfair as well, highlighting, comments from various people on Twitter, some of whom don't have a lot of prominence. God forbid we're going to start having news organizations like CNN or Fox or others that are going to make it a point to report on comments that people on Twitter make, right? That's probably not a great it's probably not a great idea to have them just regurgitate some of these attacks, whether it be on Pete or others.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of this comes down to there are people on the left that support Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and others, and they see Pete as a threat. And so their response is going to be to go after him.
Yeah.
And I think he's bearing the brunt. He's had an incredible rise in the polls and has gained a lot of momentum. I don't think ultimately he's going to get there. I think he may, in fact, be president someday. I don't believe it's going to be in 2020 or maybe even not 2024, 2028. But I think he's going to have a long career in politics, and I think someday he may make a great president. I don't think it's going to be this time around.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Anytime you rise that quickly, you put a target on your back.
I agree, and he could be picked as a vice presidential candidate. I think we all could agree that could happen as well. You never know. He is Michael Avenatti. Again, that number to call, 257-5396. Let's go to Cleopatra. You are next on the Vegas Take. You're on with Michael. How are you?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
Doing well.
Very good. I wanted to ask about the possibility of Trump resigning. Bear with me. So me and many others are super scared about the aftermath of the 2020 election. Even if Trump loses, we think that there could be violence and he could say it's rigged, etc. So right now, Michael Cohen is in prison thanks to, in big part, Michael Avenatti and all his good work. And we know that he's implicated Trump in crimes. So there's a possibility that after he leaves office, he could be indicted. So what does Mr. Avenatti think, if it's possible, that the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi could kind of cut a deal for Trump, that they would pardon him in a way or exonerate him or give him immunity in exchange of him resigning in shame and admitting to his crimes?
All right, Cleopatra.
Because that would lead to a more peaceful transition after. Is that possible? Or
Okay,
am I
Cleopatra.
dreaming in pain?
I will let Michael respond to that, but first of all, let me say it's hard to pardon somebody if they haven't been convicted of a crime, number one. And number two, me personally, I don't think there's any chance that Donald Trump resigns under any circumstance for one reason and one reason only: ego. Michael, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And, we'll start with the basic premise that in order to cut a deal with Donald Trump, he's got to want a deal. And in order for him to want a deal, he's got to recognize that he has real exposure, and there's a potential of him being removed from office. And there's no indication right now that he believes there's any risk of that. And I think he's probably right at this point in light of what we've seen by various U.S. senators. So, I don't even think that's going to be on the table. Now, if the impeachment inquiry gained momentum and it appeared that he was going to be impeached, convicted of the charges in the U.S. Senate,
that's different.
Well, then that is made or cut. But we're along from there.
That's a completely different ballgame, no question about it. All right, let's take some more phone calls at 257-5396, joined by Michael Avenatti. Let's go to Anthony. Anthony, you're next on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
What's up, Anthony?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good.
Doing great.
Hey, great. I wanted to know if Michael thinks that one problem that we're seeing is that Democrats are not noting in their comments that it's because of Republican voters who care about this country and wanted this president to have some type of accountability held to him, but they voted to put 39 Democrats in office, right, in Republican districts, saying we need to have this man held accountable because he was committing way too many crimes. It's obvious with checks that he wrote, signed by him as president, to campaign finance reform and all those things that he broke laws. So he's broken laws. So I wonder, does Michael think that we're not, noting that it's Republican voters who cared about this country enough to put Democrats in power in the House?
All right.
Is the reason why we have this thing going on now.
Good question, Anthony, and we appreciate the phone call. Michael, your response to that?
Well, I think the midterm elections reflected a lot of frustration by a lot of Americans, some on the right and some on the left, that Trump was not being held accountable, and they wanted him held accountable. And I think the House has certainly taken a lot of steps to do that. I mean, imagine if this was a Republican-controlled House, we wouldn't be anywhere close to these impeachment charges right now. American people would perhaps have never known about the Ukrainian scandal and the whistleblower. So I think it's been positive in that regard, but all about results, right? And so I think you could have a situation if Trump is reelected in 2020. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be beyond frustrated and upset, and they're going to feel. And what I'm hearing from a lot of voters is, a lot of people say, I just can't believe that he's getting away with it. He's getting away with it. He always gets away with it. And I think it's very dangerous as it relates to our institutions of government and our democracy if people start believing that they're powerless and no matter what they do, elected leaders are going to, quote, get away with it. I think that's a dangerous thing.
I agree. And I think we're in some very dangerous times right now. Michael, I always appreciate it when you take the time to join us. We know you're a pretty busy guy these days, and also look forward to you coming on and joining us. When are you going to be back in studio, my man?
Well, I'm gonna try to make that happen in the next couple weeks. You know, I saw that earlier today, by the way, in closing, that evidently Whoopi Goldberg got into it with McCain on The View, and I just have to tell you, were McCain to resign or be fired from that show, that's like top 5 greatest Christmas gifts for me.
My daddy. I'm sorry, that's my impersonation of McCain on The View.
That was really good, Brian.
Michael, thanks. I agree, by the way. That would be a great day for America. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
You know what would be great is if her and Don Jr. teamed up, they could have a show called Our Daddies.
I would actually listen to that. I would actually listen to that show.
The podcast?
Yeah.
That would actually do really well.
Maybe they could go out and they can kill exotic sheep together.
Yeah,
that would
exactly.
be, they can go on a trip together. Michael, thanks for your time, my man. Always appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great week. All right.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
He is attorney Michael Avenatti. I would actually watch that and listen to that show. That'd be great. All right. So when we come back, I'm going to talk about what is a reasonable Republican and what is an unreasonable Republican.
And breaking news, Donald Trump Jr. just blew up an elephant's leg with an IUD.
No, really? We'll have to talk about that coming up. We'll take a quick break. Be back right after this. You are listening to The Vegas Tape.